Today on Upfront, the next race for state Supreme Court, Justice Ann Walsh Bradley running for re-election. Next, Bradley on relationships on the court today after the incident in which she reportedly felt threatened by another justice. Then, is the Senate really going to lead on right to work? Upfront asks Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald. And how the next Republican run for the White House is shaping up now that Paul Ryan is out and Scott Walker is all but in.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with Mike Goucher.
Hello and welcome to Up Front. I'm Kent Wainscott in this week for Mike Goucher. One of the few times we get a glimpse into the inner workings of the state Supreme Court is when one of the justices is running for re-election. And this is one of those years. Incumbent Justice Ann Walsh Bradley will face Rock County Circuit Court's Chief Judge James Daly on April 7th. Justice Bradley was first elected to the Supreme Court in 1995 and re-elected in 2005. And she's been considered part of the court's liberal wing. She joins us now on Up Front. Thank you very much for spending some of your day with us. We appreciate that. This is something that you face every 10 years, the chance to go out and make your case to voters. So I'm going to begin there. Let me ask you to make your case to voters. Why do you deserve to be re-elected to the court?
I think this race is about the people of Wisconsin wanting and deserving a justice that is fair, fiercely independent, a justice who has for 20 years been willing to make the tough decisions and not beholden to any interest group, large or small. 20 years I've served on this Wisconsin Supreme Court, standing up and being a voice protecting the people of Wisconsin. I've upheld individual rights. I made sure that government is open and accessible to the people and held government accountable. So that's what this race is about. Voters
really don't know a lot about the court. They see the end result of your work, the court's rulings and decisions, but there's a perception about the court in this state, and in many cases that is that it's dysfunctional, that people may expect that there are philosophical differences, but not necessarily personal conflicts, and you were at the heart of one very high-profile personal conflict in which you say you were physically threatened by another member of the court, Justice Prosser. I want to know what you have to say about that now, and what's your relationship like with Justice Prosser?
Well, yesterday, as I was mentioning, I was in Appleton, and I think talking with people as I do travel around the state, I think they want the Wisconsin Supreme Court to look forward. All 7 of the justices work together. We know what the people of this state expect of us. This past week we had oral arguments. We listened to the argument. We have questions and exchanges, not only with the litigants and their attorneys, but we then go to the conference room and discuss the cases, and we discuss the cases in a very civil and cordial way. Now, these cases involve tough issues. I mean, these are serious issues, so it's not as though this is something that we take lightly, and sometimes very important issues that we believe in and are tough issues. But at the end of the day, I think all 7 of us know that not only can we do better, yes, we can do better, and all 7 of us are striving to do better.
So you don't agree with that perception that the court is dysfunctional, that there's just a poor chemistry among the justices?
Look, as I said, we deal with tough issues. And any group that deals with tough issues, any court that deals with tough issues that affects the lives of so many people, there's going to be a give and a take, and sometimes a very strong interchange. But strong interchange does not equate with dysfunctional. I know, as the other justices know, that we have room for improvement, and all 7 of us are striving to do better.
Let me ask you about this upcoming race. We have seen, it's a nonpartisan election, technically, but there is a lot of outside money. There is a lot of campaign dollars that are spent if this follows the pattern of recent Supreme Court races in this state. How do you expect this to play out?
Well, I'm concerned about the presence of outside special interest money in elections. And it's not just my concern, it's the concern I hear from the people as I travel around the state. They don't want outside special interest groups to have undue say in Wisconsin elections. It's the voters, the people, that should have the say, and not special interest groups with outsized undue influence.
Do you expect that to be the case in this race, though?
I think special interest groups very well may play a role. You know, I can't control that as a candidate. They will do what they will do. I know this, though. If outside special interest groups want to spend millions against me, so be it. I'm not backing down. I'm putting my trust in the voters of this state.
Let me ask you about a couple of pieces of legislation that have sprung up recently, seem to be fast-tracked by Republicans in Madison. One would require the court, the justices, to elect their own chief, and the other would place a mandatory retirement age on justices. Why do you think this is happening?
Well, with regard to the constitutional amendment, I think that is an area of great concerns for people from both sides of the aisle, and should be. The Constitution, in my mind, is a sacred document. And this isn't what constitutional amendments are for. They're not for settling, being used as a tool to settle political scores. You know, if you don't agree with the referee, the answer is not throwing out the rule book. You shouldn't be throwing out the rule book. I think the constitutional amendments are being targeted at replacing our Chief Justice. And, you know, that's short-sighted because the political pendulum swings. All of us know that. And we don't want 10 years from now this Constitution, which is the foundation of our state, to be used by another party that may be in power as some kind of political ping pong to go back and forth. It's much too important. So it's of great concern. As to the mandatory retirement, I think that the voters have spoken. They have elected justices for 10-year terms, and to try to undo the vote of the people for political or other purpose causes one to pause.
Supreme Court Justice Ann Walsh Bradley, up for re-election this year. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Governor Walker has called it a distraction, but some state lawmakers aren't listening to him when it comes to right to work. So where does this stand in the chamber that's expected to go first on the issue? I'll ask Republican Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald when Up Front continues.
Up Front with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association.